Hi class, I wanted to take a quick minute to go over some of the most common formatting errors that I find when grading papers. This isn't going to be a comprehensive list of everything you can possibly get incorrect, but I do want to cover some of the things that I see a lot more often than I would like to, and just some simple ways to use Word to fix those without too much trouble, because I realize that a lot of students might know that they're doing something slightly incorrectly, but they might not know the best way to actually fix that. So we're going to go through a few examples here and look at how we can actually fix that. So the first example I have here, I want you to take just a quick second to look and see if you can see anything that's wrong with this. Pause the video if you need, but probably don't need that long. The short answer is that this is a title page, but you'll notice it is not centered vertically as well as horizontally. Now, I'm not looking for absolute precision here, but remember that title pages in APA are centered both left to right, as this one is, and vertically. So the easiest way to go ahead and fix this is the brute force method, which is just highlighting the beginning of the text and just pressing enter a few times to get it into the center. That's really all you need to do to make sure it's centered. But keep that in mind that your title pages should be more or less dead center and in this rough order, including this information. So student name, college, class, instructor information, and the date. So let's move on within the same document. So that's how to adjust title page centering. The next thing here, take a minute. I would actually suggest you do pause the video here and take a minute to look and see what you can see might be wrong. So I'm going to be quiet for just 1 second to allow you to pause it if you need, and then we'll go over it. Okay, hopefully you took just a moment to figure out what's wrong, but there are a few things going on here that we need to look at. The first is going to be, hopefully you see, the spacing. A lot of times I'll say remove the extra gaps. Your paper and your headers and your title should always begin on the top of the page. So in this case, what we're going to do is come up to the Home tab on Word here, and we're going to come over to the paragraph section, and we're going to click this little box here that says Show Hide. I've mentioned this in a few other videos, but I want to mention this again. This will show you what the formatting is within the document. So in this case, you're going to see that they're just a bunch of enter presses. That's what these little lines mean. They're paragraphs. So all we're going to do is I'm pressing backspace on all these. And once we get it to the top, I'm going to press Control E, or you can come up here and click on the center icon, and that'll put it back to the center. So that's all we needed to do to get rid of all of those extra gaps to start at the top of the page, and you'll notice how much cleaner it looks already. It goes from the title page directly into the text. The next thing to look at, take another second and pause it if you need to. I'm going to be quiet again for you to go over maybe some of the other issues, and I'll get back to you in just a sec. Okay, what did you catch? Chances are you probably didn't notice that this is not in title case. Remember that title case is something we need to be doing on all of our titles, headers, and subheaders. I will have a link below to the APA guide on title case, but basically anything that's not like a preposition and so on needs to be capitalized. So in this case, technology and children should both be capitalized. So the ofs and ons and things like those are the only words that shouldn't be capitalized. So this is proper title case. The next thing you might have noticed is that the paragraphs here are not indented. Remember, APA requires indenting paragraphs, and that's all there is to it. You just press Tab to indent it once. And I turn on the formatting here so that you can see I'm not doing anything crazy. Just one press of Tab, and that's all it takes. Along with that, you might notice that the margins here look a little off to you. 10 internet points if you did catch that. It's really hard to catch sometimes, but you'll notice the margins here are a little bit bigger than they should be. Remember, APA requires 1-inch margins all around, so top, bottom, left, and right. This looks a little bit big, so let's turn on our formatting here and see if we can figure out what's going on. Okay, well, I clicked on it, and you'll notice that there aren't any formatting icons here that would indicate to us that we might have done something wrong in the formatting. So the next thing you're going to want to look at, if, for example, you haven't accidentally pressed Tab on every single paragraph or line, because sometimes that will cause it. You want to watch out for pressing Tab too many times. That will do it for you sometimes. But there is a way to check the formatting to see if there are any issues. The way that you're going to want to do that is to click on the paragraph in question and come up to the Layout tab. This is where you can adjust it. You'll see that the indent here is set for 0.5. That means that all of that text is set 0.5 inches beyond the 1-inch margins that the paper is set up with already. So you'll notice I put it back to 0, and look, perfect 1-inch margins with a proper indent in the paragraph. So that's how you're going to want to take care of that. If you have any weird indentations, keep in mind that this can change throughout the document, so you might need to go through and check all of your paragraphs. For example, I just changed it in that paragraph, but look how this one is still 0.5. So let's go ahead and delete that and look through. Okay, well, the rest of it looks like it was just fine, so it was just those first 2 paragraphs that this student didn't indent properly. And speaking of indents, you'll notice that the student does not have any of their paragraphs indented. Remember, every paragraph should be indented like this within APA style. And this goes for not just full draft papers, but this goes for just about every assignment you're going to be doing, unless there is no APA requirement, which usually comes in the first week or 2 of assignments. So keep that in mind that you want to indent all of your paragraphs. The next thing I want to look at within this assignment is, see if you can catch it. This one's going to be even trickier than the title. Okay, did you see that TikTok here, being a proper noun, the name of something, is not fully capitalized? You're going to want to make sure that you spell the names of proper nouns, so companies, movies, places, apps, things like that properly, and in this case it would be capitalized for both of them. So just make sure that you're consistent with your capitalization, not just with title case, but also with your proper nouns. You'll see that TikTok is capitalized here and here, but it isn't here. So beyond getting the capitalization right, also make sure that you are consistent. So you'll see that this student has the capitalization all over the place. Be sure to really watch that. You really want to stay consistent. And I like to liken this to the medical field, where the difference in capitalizing something here might be the same as moving the decimal in the wrong place for a medication. So you might get, instead of micrograms, milligrams, or grams, and think of the consequences that can happen if you move the decimal in the wrong place with the dosage and getting the name of a prescription wrong, because sometimes there are different prescriptions that have just 1 or 2 letter differences, and they're vastly different. So when you're going through and paying attention to these details, remember that the point of these details is to learn to pay attention to details when it really matters in the medical setting. So there's one other thing I'm going to look at on this paper before we move on, and that is what I like to call dangling headers. So you see that there's the obesity and addiction section, and once the student finishes, they move on to the school setting of technology. This is an entirely different section. Well, when you have a header like this that appears at the very end of a page, and then the text starts on the next page, you're going to want to make sure that this header always starts on its own page. Obviously, when you have a header that starts in the middle of the page or even lower on the page, you don't have to worry about it. But if literally the only thing on there is the header and then the text continues on the next page, what you want to do is come up to the end of the preceding paragraph, come up to insert, and then all you're going to want to do is click on, under the pages category, page break. And you'll notice that that just dropped it down to the following page. That's all you need to do, but really make sure you don't leave dangling headers on any of your headers or subheadings. Let's go ahead and see if there are any others in here. Now it looks like all of these are pretty good, so we're going to move on to the next example. So can we see any issues that are going on with this assignment? Well, you might have noticed that there look to be tiny little gaps between the references. I know that this is subtle, but this is one of, if not the single biggest thing that I find I'm providing feedback on, is extra gaps between paragraphs or sections. So as we are working in APA, remember everything should be double spaced. This is double spaced, but you'll notice there's a wee little bit of extra gap here. And the way to fix that is first to check to make sure, oops, my bad, that we don't have multiple enter presses, because sometimes if you press enter twice, it'll give slightly extra spacing, slightly more spacing than you want. So go ahead and use under Home our Show and Hide, just to make sure there isn't an extra enter press. You'll see that shows there are two. That was not the case in this one. So what we're going to want to do is come up to Layout and check the spacing category under Paragraph. You'll notice that it says 8-point after. This means there is an 8-point spacing that follows after this paragraph. You're going to want to go ahead and just click the down arrow and reduce that to 0. This one has it too. And this one has it too. And this one has it too. So now look how much cleaner this looks now that we tweak just those tiny little extra spaces within the paragraph. And remember, this is under the Layout tab under Paragraph. So be sure you watch that in not just your references, but your work in general. So the next thing we want to take a look at is an outline. We're just going to look at this quickly, but see if you can catch what the problem is here. If you took more than a second to look at it, chances are you notice that there is random bolding. Bolding is great for headers and subheadings and titles, but for example, it's inconsistent. So this section A is bolded, but you'll notice these sections B, C, etc. are not bolded. So in this case, all you're going to want to do is highlight the text that should not be bolded and just press Control B, or you can come up and just press the bold button. So I don't know why A is not bolded, but B is. So you want to be consistent with how you bold or underline your text in general. And it looks like this one actually is bolded, but that brings me to another great point, is it looked like it wasn't bolded at first. You might have thought that it was. If so, you have better eyes than I do. But you'll notice that it still looks different. Well, here's the problem. If you take a look at this text, it's in the Arial font, whereas the text below it is in Helvetica. Always, always, always keep your fonts consistent throughout a document. There's no reason you should be switching fonts like that. Sometimes in titles or headers, you can get away with doing a slightly different font, but within the actual sections like this, there's no reason these should be different. In this case, I'm going to just highlight this and bring it back to Arial. There we go. Just to fix it a little bit. But you'll notice the font sizes are different, 10.5 to 12. So really watch out for font inconsistency, both in the font style and the font size. So this is 10.5, this is 12. Why are they different? I don't know. They shouldn't be. So I'm going to highlight both of them and just go to 11 point. 11 point is just what I like to use. So I'm just showing you an example of how to do that easily. But that's a really good example here to stay consistent with bolding, font choice, and font sizes. Okay, the next example. What do you see as a problem here? Take just a second to see if you can spot it. Okay, did you catch it? The simple answer for this is that it's not double spaced. Remember, APA should be double spaced throughout the entire document, and you'll notice all of this is single spaced. The easiest way to do that is to just highlight the entire document by pressing Control A, and then you can press Control 2. That double spaces it. Now, when you do this, you might see that there are some tremendous gaps. This is where you're going to want to go back and use the other tips that we suggested to see if there are extra spaces, which there are. You'll notice there is an extra enter press, and if maybe there aren't some spacing before and after. So in this one, you'll see there's 9-point spacing, and you'll want to remove that for both. So this is really a good example of an issue that covers everything we've looked at. So you want to make sure that it's double spaced, and then it will bring up potential problems that you might not have realized, in which case you're going to want to go ahead and fix all of those, but use the tips that we said before. I'm not going to go through and cover all of those again because we already did. I think we have one more. Okay, so here is another one. This one requires double spacing too. So you'll see there's a good space between the two paragraphs, but what happens when we double space the whole document? Well, like we saw in the others, there's much too great of a gap. And this one doesn't have just a little gap, it has a major, major gap. So let's see if there's some extra enter presses here. Oh, it looks like there were two extra enter presses. Yikes, a little bit of a tongue twister. So I'm just gonna go ahead and press backspace to delete those. And it looks like the spacing in the paragraph there is fine, so that brings it back to where it should be. So go through anything that you're writing and check for these issues: the line spacing, the font consistency, the double spacing, all of those things. They are individually, they are just little issues, but remember, APA is all about attention to detail, and those little issues can compound and turn an otherwise great paper into something that's a mess to read. So watch out for each and every single one of these. I will put timestamps for each of the little problems in the YouTube video here, so if you have a specific issue you want to go see how to fix, be sure to go back and watch that. But that should cover all of the major issues that I see in grading papers. Here you're going to see that there's a random... Oh, actually, this is the last one, sorry. This is color. You'll notice that, at least on my screen, there's a tiny bit of a blue tint to this font. Remember that you want to keep all of your fonts the same, and that includes color. So I'm just going to go ahead and click automatic to make it black. You'll notice how different that looks. And bolding here is just fine, so I'm going to leave it bolded. Now this looks perfect. It's centered just enough. You have a nice title here and all the other information. So that's all we needed to do on that one, was the color. So color goes along with all the other font issues you might need to worry about. But that should be all there is to it. Like I said, I will have timestamps below so that you can just skim to the ones that you might need a quick refresher on. But I hope this helps, and if you have any questions, be sure to let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.